Ah, I see you're from Gondor.
Indeed, fellow. Good old Minas Tirith.
Oh yes, a veteran of the war?
Correct. I even joined King Elisar at the Black Gate.
Of course, I just wonder, where was Gondor when the Westfold fell?
Pardon? I didn't hear you.
Of course you didn't, you Gondorian. Where were you when the Westfold fell, huh? Huh?
Maigovanin, Melanin. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'm back with another video with me actually on camera. So today I actually just wanted to go over my Tolkien collection. This will just be exclusively books, not any movies or anything else like that. I do like Tolkien a lot. He's one of my favorite authors, and I do consider myself a book collector, and so I find my Tolkien collection to be okay. It's nothing phenomenal, it's not fantastic, but it definitely has come about through effort. So there's 3 stacks here that I'm going to be going through. I will try to get through again as quickly as possible because I don't want this video to be too long, but let's just get right into it. So to start off, I have my original copies of The Lord of the Rings. There's the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King. I cannot even remember when I got these, though I read them as a freshman in high school. It was probably a gift from my mother, if I were to guess. If my parents, maybe for Christmas or something, I really can't remember. Besides that, I also have the first 5 volumes of History of the Middle-earth. I haven't read through all these like I should. I've had these for years, and there are many volumes I'm missing actually, because these are the only volumes of History of Middle-earth I have. So, box set, old covers. There's some nicer looking covers that are more of a trade paperback size as well. Then I have my complete 1-volume version of The Lord of the Rings. I read this one when I had to read Lord of the Rings in class. I bought it just for that, even though I already had copies. I really liked the 1-volume edition, and I mean, though I got it as new, but it was a little beat up, as you can see there, and there's a sticker on the back too. So one of those times when they say it's new, but it's just in pretty good condition. So that's my 1-volume version of Lord of the Rings. And then I have one that is not a book written by Tolkien actually, but it is a course on Quenya. This would be, I imagine, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but it's by Thorsten Rank. It's got to be somewhat fan-made, not going off of what Tolkien did create and making maybe a more complete language. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't actually looked through it all that much. I've had it for a couple years though. And then I have The Great Tale. I'm going backwards here on these, but this is The Fall of Gondolin. Great book. This is the 3rd of the Great Tales. So, of course, there's Ulmo on the back. And we got Beren and Luthien. Beautiful, beautiful tale. This is the 2nd of the Great Tales. More beautiful art. And this one's more beat up. It's older, for that matter, but this was my mother's copy, actually. And this was actually the first Tolkien book I ever read. The Children of Hurin. One of my favorites still. I'm not sure if it is my favorite, but very tragic story. I love it, honestly. I'll go through this one first. My second Tolkien story I ever read was The Hobbit. This was a gift from my mother on Valentine's Day when I was 14 or so, 13 maybe, I'm not really sure. Great book, pretty traditional copy, common copy at least, of The Hobbit. And then I have the French version of The Hobbit, one of those words that does not have the L apostrophe, it's Le Habit. There goes my bookmark, because I'm actually in the middle of reading this, but it's on the ground now. It's okay, this art is actually by Tolkien himself, so pretty nice art. I believe there was another earlier translation of The Hobbit into French called Bilbo the Hobbit, and, well, in French of course, and I heard that one wasn't as good. These were the copies of Lord of the Rings I found at Goodwill, though sadly it was only the Two Towers and the Return of the King, and I believe this is actually Tolkien's art as well on these covers. If you look at those again, 2 of the 3 books I have ever bought at Goodwill, and sadly the 3rd one was not The Fellowship of the Ring. You may have heard that there's a version of Lord of the Rings coming out at the end of this year, illustrated by Tolkien. Well, this is The Hobbit, illustrated by Tolkien. I wanted this one because I knew Tolkien had done some illustrations, and that when I looked at them online, I noticed that a lot of them were for The Hobbit. And so this includes those. I'm not sure if it includes all of them, but definitely includes some of his more, I don't want to say famous pieces, but more well known. I mean, he's definitely not a famous illustrator by any means. So, but it was something that I believe his mother taught him when he was younger. So this is Illustrated Hobbit by Tolkien. It's got a very nice spine. And next we have Tolkien's The Story of Kullervo. This is his version of the Kalevala, I believe. It's a Finnish, call it folk tale, I suppose. Not very long. He did this when he was pretty young, as far as I'm aware. This was certainly a heavy inspiration to the story of the Children of Hurin. Our hero, Kullervo, seems very similar to Turin. We have the Lay of Othru and Itrun. It's just a long poem. I actually haven't read it yet. Similar in bind-up to Story of Kullervo. Okay, onward. Here is a collection of tales that are not part of the Tolkien Legendarium, taking place in Middle-earth. That is J.R. Tolkien's Tales from the Perilous Realm. Lots of these tales have been published elsewhere in many different versions. This one has an introduction from Tom Shippey, includes Rover Random, Farmer Giles of Ham, The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, Smith of Wooten Major, and Leaf by Niggle. It also has On Fairy Stories in here. That's Tales from the Perilous Realm. Good bind-up. Next we have The Silmarillion. This was actually a Christmas gift from my older brother when I was younger. How do they say it? The Tolkien Bible. Great book. If you haven't read it, you have read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and One and More, this is probably the book for you. Then here's a copy of Unfinished Tales that I got from a used bookstore when I was on vacation. It still has the receipt in it. So, but great copy of Unfinished Tales. This is one of, I believe it was one of the first pieces of Tolkien's work published after his death. Next we have The Lord of the Rings, A Reader's Companion by Wayne G. Hammond and Christina Skoll. This is a great companion for when you're reading Lord of the Rings. It gives you chapter by chapter guides, and there's also a bunch of stuff on the appendix as well. This is a great book. Sometimes I believe it has a white cover, but this is the black cover version. And then next we have the longest in size thing in my Tolkien collection. I am a member of the Tolkien Society, so this is Malorn issue 61. It is the Tolkien Journal. It comes in like magazine form. I believe there's only one a year, there may be two. Here's Malorn issue 60 and Malorn issue 61. And then I have an item that is The Road Goes Ever On, a song cycle with music by Donald Swann and the poems by J.R. Tolkien. So it has a lot of Tengwar on there. There's even some songs in here that are in Elvish, as far as I'm aware. I am not musically inclined. I believe this is also the second edition. Second edition revised. First edition, I think, is red, where this one is green. So. And now, finally, the last stack. So these top ones kind of just go along with that Tolkien Society stuff. These are just the periodical Amen Hin that comes out for members of the Tolkien Society. I'm sure that sounds awful, but those are my copies of the Amen Hin. Here's another Tolkien Studies thing, literally called Tolkien Studies. In this case, this is the Annual Scholarly Review. This is the one, 2019. This is the first one I ever bought. You get this from West Virginia University Press. One of my teachers at the school I went to for a little bit actually is one of the editors on this. Here is the 2020 copy, of course, with Christopher Tolkien on the front, since he passed away. We got one of my favorite works by Tolkien. It is his Finn and Hengist, or Hengist, however you want to say it. So this is some great work as far as Old English literature goes. Then we have Humphrey Carpenter's biography. I have not finished this, but I believe this is the only authorized version of a biography for Tolkien. So, good stuff. Then we have another one of my favorite works. And it's so hard to say like one of my favorite works by Tolkien because I love so many of his works so much, and they mean so much to me. But this is The Monsters and Critics and Other Essays. I would get a copy of this. Any fan of Tolkien, any fan of fantasy, there's some great stuff in here. I'm a big fan of Old English literature as well, and so that is just a super, super, super great thing to have. He's got some talks. His lectures on The Monsters and Critics, of course, is his most famous one. He also has On Fairy Stories, among some other ones. In fact, there's even one in here about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. For those who are interested in reading that poem, I would read the essay along with it, or at least afterwards. And we have one that I showed off in my ABC book title challenge. That is The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun. Again, this is one of the nicer, newer copies. They also have The Fall of Arthur in this. I believe they just released The Green Knight. If not, yeah, they just released The Green Knight with a copy like this as well. Some other works of Tolkien's do have versions like this, but this is my only version. This isn't my only book by him that has this version of it. So, The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, classic Germanic saga there with Tolkien's poetic version of it. Then, of course, along those same lines, we have Tolkien's Beowulf. I got this when it was pretty new. Very poetic, but I would also say there's a reason he never published it. It's definitely not the easiest to read, and as far as I'm aware, he actually had 2 versions of Beowulf. One he didn't even finish. That may have been better. It's still beautiful, don't get me wrong, Tolkien's writing is definitely beautiful. Kind of irks me that it does not have the same lines. You cannot compare a line, 476 to line 470 in the normal Beowulf poem to line 476 in this, because they don't match. There's less lines, I believe, in this than there is in most other versions of Beowulf. But still, it also has some extra stuff, like his Silish spell and whatnot. And then we have Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, or Sir Gawain if you want to say it that way, also with Pearl and Sir Orfeo. This is a great translation, again, just showing off Tolkien's mastery of translation, but also poetic meter, rhyme, alliteration. Tolkien does it all fantastically. This one is not one written by Tolkien, and it's kind of not connected a ton. There is a note at the beginning of this book written by Tolkien and dated 1918. This is A Spring Harvest by Geoffrey Bache Smith. This is one of his best friends that passed away at the Battle of the Somme during World War I. And I believe he helped get it published. He encouraged the family, Smith's family, to get it published after his passing. And so he has a sweet, very sweet note at the beginning of this that, honestly, almost every time I read it, it brings tears to my eyes. It's very beautiful. And this one is a little more far-fetched, but this is the Oxford English Dictionary, more specifically Dictionary of English Etymology. This is something I'm interested in anyways. I love etymology and philology and whatnot, but Tolkien did work on a couple of the words, I believe in the W's, shortly after he got back from the war. So I took the slipcover off because it was hideous. So there's that. We have another one of his early works that is A Middle English Reader and Vocabulary. So this was actually originally published separately, though I believe it was supposed to be published together, or at least side by side. So Kenneth Sizem here did the actual reader, and Tolkien did the vocabulary. This is a great work for anyone interested in any Middle English literature. And of course, if you're a Tolkien fan, it's just something else to add to your collection. Something else along those lines is a Middle English transliteration, I believe is the right word. I didn't look it up beforehand, so it is of the Ankreneula, or Ankreneuvisa as it's shown here. It doesn't have Tolkien's name on the front, but it does have it on the side there. So this is something that actually took him decades to do, but it's mostly, I believe, just he took a manuscript and he put it down on paper so people could read the manuscript without having to actually go where the manuscript is kept to read it themselves. So we have this. This is actually kind of an expensive thing you have to buy from Oxford University Press. So Ankreneuvisa. Along his Beowulf, the Monsters and Critics line, I have Beowulf and the Critics. It's a revised second edition edited by Michael Drout. This really goes over the draft versions that Tolkien had for his Monsters and Critics lecture. Michael Drout is a great professor of Tolkien scholarship, and this is a really thick tome. This is from ACMRS, the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies, but this is a great book. If you find you really love Tolkien and Monsters and Critics, then maybe you want to read this afterwards. And then we have the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. These are published letters by the author to a multitude of different peoples. Really gives you great insight onto his character. And last but not least, I should have put something else here specifically. I didn't really design these stacks very well, but I have The Road to Middle-earth. It's a great Tolkien piece of scholarship by Tom Shippey. Also has, I will say, it doesn't just tell us about Tolkien, it tells us mostly about his writings, but it also has some of Tolkien's lesser known poems, early poems, at the back of this, such as Bagma Bloma and Eadi Beothu, which are both poems I enjoy. Anyways, that is it, everyone. That is my Tolkien collection. What are your favorite Tolkien books, and what are the ones here are you interested in getting that you do not have, and which books do you have that I don't have? There are many, many books that either have articles by Tolkien, versions of Tolkien's works that I do not have. Things that I would, of course, like to get to eventually. But let me know how you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's anything I can do to improve. Farewell, and until next time.